Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here with our recaps of This Is Us. Okay, I know I am behind, but I made a commitment today to just get these last two episodes out to you guys, and then I'll be back on track with tonight's episode. What happens a lot with me is I'll miss an episode or two in doing the recaps, and then I'll just say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. I won't watch the rest of this, or I won't recap the rest of the season, but I'm trying to break that habit. And so no matter how many weeks I've let pass, I'm committing to myself to go back and do those weeks so that I can get caught up and have all the episodes done. So in episode 4, which was titled Honesty, we have the flashback scenes that we normally get. And so these flashback scenes are basically focused on Kevin as an infant and Kevin as a high schooler. And so as a baby, Kevin used to cry, keeping Jack and Rebecca up. They don't want to hear him cry. Rebecca, is being a typical mom, thinking that something horrible is going to happen if she lets the baby cry. And so Miguel and his wife, have given them advice and told them that, if they just allow Kevin to cry, he'll get over it. But by running in, picking him up, every time he cries, they're just prolonging the agony. And, my mother used to tell me, I've never known a child to die from crying. And basically, when you keep running in there, getting the child, the child is training you instead of you training the child. So Rebecca is just hell bent that she is going to go in there and pick her baby up. She doesn't care, what Jack has to say. And then eventually she has to learn that, Kevin has to grow up. He has to be his own person. And so in the high school version of Kevin, in the flashback scenes, Kevin is, he's been chosen to play football. I believe he's the quarterback on the team. And, Jack is really happy and excited. What father wouldn't be excited that their son, is the star quarterback of the team? And so, he's working Kevin out. The coach told Kevin, he needed to eat a lot of eggs. He needed to eat 50 eggs for breakfast. And so sure enough, Kevin is sitting there in the morning at breakfast trying to scuff down all these eggs. And Rebecca's like, what in the world is going on? And this is crazy. Why are you doing that? And then that evening when Jack goes to pick Kevin up from football practice, the coach lets him know that he was only joking with Kevin when he told Kevin to eat all those eggs, that he doesn't really expect him to do it. He said, but they have a bigger problem, and that is that Kevin is not memorizing the play calls. And of course, you can't be the quarterback if you can't remember the calls, to give to the other players to get the touchdown, right? So he wants to recommend Kevin for a football program or a football camp that's taking place at Allegheny College. But he says that Kevin has to show some commitment and put in the work. And so then we have a scene where Rebecca and Jack are arguing about, Rebecca being too easy on Kevin. And the minute that Kevin, something seems too hard for him and he wants to quit, she's all gung-ho, like, okay, well, you don't have to quit. We can find something else for you to do. But Jack wants Kevin to stick to it. And then we learn later on that the reason he's so hard on Kevin is because his dad used to call him, you're a jack of all trades. And he used to think that that was a positive. And then one day his brother told him, no, jack of all trades, master of none. Like, you're all over the place and you're not succeeding at anything. And so he wants his kids to know that he appreciates their gifts and their talents and what they do. And he wants to push them to excel in one thing instead of just being scattered all over the place. And I can really respect that with, Jack feeling that way, because I was the same way with my daughters. It was like they could try different things, but if it didn't seem that they were excelling at something. Well, with my oldest daughter, if it didn't seem like she was excelling, I would pull her out of that, put her into this. And so we actually had that conversation now that she has a daughter, and she's like, Mom, I think, Ava's going to be a gymnast. And I said, yeah, she'll be the gymnast that you always wanted to be, because I had put my daughter in gymnastics class when she was young, and the coach had pulled me to the side, and she said, you might want to find something else for your daughter to do, because, she's going to be too tall. She's not going to have the build for a gymnast. And I would just hate to see you invest all this money. And so I pulled her out of gymnastics and we went on to something else. But then I learned when my youngest daughter came along, I put her into tennis, and I said, no, she's going to stick to it. We're going to put in the work. And, she played tennis all the way through college. And so I told my daughter, if you feel that Ava's going to be good at gymnastics, start her early, stick with it, and don't let anybody tell you differently. So I understand both Jack and Rebecca's perspective at that point. So then we get into the current times, and I am going to do this in order of the child. So I'm going to tell you guys everything that happened with Kevin, everything that happened with Kate, everything that happened with Randall, because I think it gets too confusing, when I start going back and forth. So we start with Kevin, and in real time, Kevin is at the set. Remember, he had read for a new movie that was coming out, and now they're sitting down with the director, him and the leading lady, to go over the roles and the parts and everything. And so he meets the actress that, he'll be working with, and then the director comes in, and funny, the actress name is Ava, and that's my granddaughter's name. And so the director name is Jordan Foster. And so Jordan and Ava have an exchange, and Kevin gets into actor mode and starts kissing up because, Ava's like, oh, I have so much respect for you and I'm so happy and blah, blah, blah. And when you did this and that, and the director, he's feeding into it, and Kevin's feeling left out, and he's like, okay, well, let me kiss up to him too. So then he's talking to the guy, and he refers to the project they're working on as a movie. And so then Jordan Foster corrects him and says, it's not a movie, it's a film. And so we can already see the tension building between the two. So Kevin is struggling, at reading. Like, he sounded fine to me when he was reading the parts, but Jordan didn't feel, that he was doing his thing. And so he kept interjecting, saying, try that again, do this, do that. But on the other hand, he's praising Ava, but not giving Kevin any feedback or accolades. And so after being interrupted a few times, Kevin snaps, because Kevin does what Kevin does. And so Kevin is waiting outside, after the reading. And so Jordan Foster comes out, and, he asks him, how am I doing? And so the Jordan guy is annoyed and lets Kevin know that he needs to stop looking for accolades and step his game up. And he tells him that, that's the difference between being remembered as a good actor and being remembered as a great actor. So in the flashback scenes we had where they were showing Randall and how Randall used these color-coded cards to study and memorize things. And so I believe Kevin overheard Jack and Rebecca talking about him and what all was going on with him in the football team. And so he goes up and he decides to ask Randall for help, and, for Randall to show him how his whole system works. And so at the end of Kevin's part on this episode, we see him studying, using the color-coded card method that Randall had taught him back when they were younger. And so the doorbell rings and a delivery person comes and drops off a gift basket from Jordan Foster with a card that reads, "That a boy." So maybe Kevin will be encouraged to stop needing a pat on the back and just go out there and do his thing and be the best actor that he can be. Jack, and he's in the kitchen drinking a glass of water when baby Kevin starts to cry. And so he goes upstairs, but the scene goes to high school Kevin, who is studying in the dark using a flashlight. And then it goes back to the crying Kevin and Jack debating whether to open the door or not. And then eventually Kevin stops crying. And so maybe that is, the lead in to the fact that Kevin is about to grow up finally. Next, we move over to Kate. And so Kate and Toby are in real time and they're preparing a birth plan because, they're thinking about adopting this unborn baby from this chick named Ellie. So Toby isn't sold that Ellie will go through with the adoption. He just keeps getting these feelings that, it's different adopting a baby that's already born and the mother has given the baby up versus adopting a baby from someone who's still carrying the baby and, can have this bonding period and natural mother instincts because Ellie already has a daughter already. And so Kate lets him know that she's going to an appointment with Ellie, so that they can see an ultrasound. And so Toby's like, okay, don't get too attached. And so they have decided to name the baby Chloe. Now, I didn't know if that was a good idea or not because you don't know. Like, to me, by naming the baby and going to the ultrasound appointment, it seems like you're really setting yourself up for failure. And, Kate is really, becoming more attached with the notion of them getting this baby, whereas Ellie, even though she keeps saying she's going to go through with it, can change her mind at a moment's notice. So we're at the ultrasound appointment, and Ellie is excited and running her mouth, talking to Kate. They're talking about going to lunch and everything. And then all of a sudden, Kate calls the baby Chloe. And the look on Ellie's face when she heard the word Chloe was like, oh, Lord, please don't let this girl, say something to Kate about, you're getting too attached to my baby. I can't make up my mind. But it turns out to be something totally different. So Kate realizes that she's messed up with Ellie. And after the appointment, they're outside in the parking lot talking, and she asks her, did she say something wrong? Did she have a problem with her naming the baby or calling the baby Chloe? And she says that, she knows that it was wrong for her to name the baby without discussing it with Ellie first. But, they're so excited. Well, it turns out that the guy that Ellie was married to, her husband who passed away, who is not the father of this baby, she's pregnant from a one-night stand after, 2 years after her husband passed away. She decided to go out on a date, and then she had one-night stand without protection and ended up pregnant. So it turns out that she actually met her husband while she was in high school. And so there was another girl in one of his classes, and the girl used to tell the husband that Ellie had a hairy mole on her chest that was the shape of South America, I think she said. And so I guess after the first time the two of them got busy or whatever, he was looking at her like, there's no hairy mole on your chest. And she was like, where would you have heard that from? And he said, Chloe in my science class, used to tell me that. And so that's why, she frowned up when she heard the name Chloe. And she told Kate that, she can name the baby whatever she wants to name the baby. But, she would appreciate it if she didn't name the baby Chloe. But of course, she wasn't going to stop her from doing that. Well, Ellie's still beating herself up, for having sex with the guy on the first night. And then she shares that she was about to have an abortion, but realized that it wasn't the right choice for her. And so she admits that she's having second thoughts, but she's 100% sure that if she goes through with the adoption, that she would definitely choose Kate and Toby. Like, there's no doubt in her mind that that's who she wants to adopt the baby. But she is like, weighing the pros and cons of going through with the adoption. So Kate is on her way home and she gets a call from Kevin, and, she's like, I got my own stuff going on, and she doesn't really want to hear from Kevin and his complaining and him needing, somebody to push him along and encourage him, which was sort of like what they were showing us in the flashback scene, that this is how Kevin got to be the way that he is, because Beth was always coddling him and, reassuring him that he was good enough. So Kevin misses all the signs that Kate doesn't really want to talk to him. And so he immediately goes into all this about Kevin mode. Everything's about Kevin, and he starts whining and talking in metaphors about how Jordan Foster gave him a hard time. And so Kate asks if working with Foster is worth it. And so he tells her that he's thinking about Rebecca and trying to get an Oscar, and taking her, to the Oscars so he can stand on stage and thank her for all the great things that she's done. Now, I guess that's something that you can imagine, but to actually, like, realistically at this point, your mom has been diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. She's not really doing well, at this point, because remember, she got lost again. And for him to let that be his motivation, and it seems like all of them are motivated by trying to prove a point or to please, their parents, and to live up to some expectation from their youth. And so that was his reasoning why, he really wants to try hard. Like, he's not doing it for himself. He's doing it to be able to thank Rebecca for being a great mom, at the Oscars. So Kate switches the conversation to Randall and shares, what Randall said about growing up as a Black kid, being raised in an all-white family, all-white neighborhood. And so she admits that it's hard enough, although Kevin sees it differently and felt that Randall got all the attention. Like, what is he talking about? Like, how hard could it have been? And so she wonders what, is still like for Randall. And so Kevin refuses to believe they did anything wrong. And Kate says that they all are dealing with stuff that they have never addressed before. And so when she gets home, Toby walks in talking about the ultrasound and saying how it looked like, I think he said like a rubbery figure or something like that. He's making jokes, but he says that he's already in love, with the figure, but Kate is so distracted that she's not really paying attention to what he's saying. So then, she starts thinking about what Ellie has shared with her, about the high school thing, and how just hearing the name Chloe brings up that memory and what that meant to her. And so she tells Toby that talking with Ellie, brought up some stuff in her own life that she buried away. And when she was 18, she was in an abusive relationship. And after it ended, she learned she was pregnant and had an abortion. And so she says that she never told anyone about the abortion, that she actually went alone, to the clinic to have it, didn't tell anybody, didn't tell her mom, didn't tell a friend. She just endured all that on her own. And, I wonder how many people, I would think that more people than not probably have that same experience, that they're so ashamed of that decision that they decide to do it on their own. They don't want anybody else to know. And then how many of them, through time and as they get older, that eats away at them. And then what happens if you've had one and then you get pregnant and you lose the baby, or, or you never get married or never have the opportunity to have kids? I'm sure that decision at that moment, could negatively impact you psychologically. So I can kind of understand where Kate is going and how, that made her, it brought back memories to that time, and the fact that she never ever told anybody about it, and that Toby is the first person that she's telling. Next, we go over to Randall. So at Randall's, poor Beth is dealing with the girls again, but I love the fact that when they open up the scenes for Randall, it seems like every time they've gone to Randall this season, and I could be wrong, but it's like they're at the breakfast table, the girls are at the breakfast table, Beth is in the kitchen, Randall comes down, doesn't have time to actually sit and eat a full meal. He's always on the go. And I know y'all get tired of me saying this, but I really hope that when This Is Us ends, and I believe they said they were only going to do 7 seasons, but I'm hoping that when it ends, that Beth and Randall get a spinoff of their own, because I think it would be great. And so Annie wants to get her hair done, but she says that her hair is a fright. Okay, so then Tess chimes in and says that they need to stop letting her watch Little Women. Like, people don't talk like that. Like, who goes around saying that their hair is a fright? So Randall comes in asking for Beth's thoughts on which tie he should wear. And then he quickly turns his attention to Deja to clown her about the fact that Malik would be shadowing him at City Hall. And so Deja reminds him that he's the only person in the district that Malik could have chosen that, represents City Hall. And so don't get all in the big head thinking that Malik thought he was special. And so then Randall says, your father and your boyfriend spending the day together, girl, you in your feelings about that. So then Malik ends up showing up 6 minutes late, but he's ready for the day. He's all excited, but Randall points out, you were supposed to be here at 8. It's 8:06 now. So then Deja gets up and she lays down the rules for him, and basically tells him, do not share anything about me. Don't share nothing about you. Don't just share anything about us. Just don't talk about us when you're with him. And so then Randall is like, okay, now you're 7 minutes late. Let's get going. And y'all know Randall is such a control freak that Malik better get it together or him and Randall ain't going to work out too well. So Malik is having a hard time staying awake as Randall and Jaywan, go over the agenda. And so Jaywan lets Randall know that he can't help him with his video bulletin that he does. So I guess Randall goes live and reads the city council bulletin to the citizens. It's something he does to connect with everybody. And so he explains to Malik that Jaywan was talking about, but first he had to wake Malik up. So Malik does the one thing that Deja told him not to do. He tells Randall that, he's very familiar with the Bulletin podcast and that Deja watches it, every time he goes live and she really enjoys it. So, of course, that makes Randall happy to know that Deja, just to be putting up a front when she act like she don't want to be bothered, but she really loves him and loves what he does. So he suggests that Malik stands in for Jaywan in helping with the show. So in his office, Randall and Malik get the camera all set up, and then Malik has to leave and go into another office. And so at home, Deja is about to watch from her tablet and lets Beth know, that it's about to start. So then Malik gets a phone call from his mom because the baby is teething. She can't get the baby to stop crying. He's telling the mom that, there's a frozen teething ring in the freezer to go get that. And so him and his mom are just chatting it up and everything. Randall has finished with the bulletin. And so I guess after the video, he changes clothes or whatever, does a little dance. And so Malik hasn't stopped the video. And then we have Randall, who is undressing before the world, and he's dancing, he's moving around and carrying on. And, he's talking about how William, and how William, is his inspiration. And he says that he's not going to cry, although people say that's what he does. And actually that part was before he undressed and started dancing. So like I said, Malik was supposed to stop the video feed, but he's distracted with the call, to his mom. And with the camera still rolling, that's when Randall begins to undress. And so at home, Deja alerts Beth to what's going on. Tess comes running down the stairs like, Mom, look at Dad. What is he doing? And so they're calling Randall. Randall isn't answering the phone. And so thank God he's dancing behind the chair. He had his big leather chair that he was dancing behind. So you could only see like waist high was what you could see. So Deja calls Malik and lets him know what's happening. And Malik runs in and turns off the camera. So Randall is chastising Malik for not, giving 100%. Malik says that he had to get up at 4:30 to show up at his house 6 minutes late. And then he lets Randall know that what his baby wants and needs comes first. And Randall counters that when he was 17, he lost his father. He thought he owed it to everyone to make his dreams smaller. And so he tells Malik to make his dreams bigger, not in spite of his daughter, but because of her. And then Malik replies, he says the size of his dreams aren't the issue. And then he starts rattling off his game plan about how, he was going to graduate from high school. He was going to go to college. He was going to go to work for some chef at some culinary school. He was going to open his own restaurant, so he has it all planned out, but what he doesn't realize is that it's nobody's business to be concerned with the fact that you had to get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in order to get on time. Because if you constantly go to work late on your job, they don't care, what you're dealing with your kids at home, what your family life is like, what you have to go through. They don't care about, the subway was late, the bus didn't come. Employers don't care about that kind of stuff. Like, and even in college, like there are some college professors that if you're not on time to class, they lock their door and will not let you in, and will either take off for your assignment being late because you couldn't turn it in because they locked the door, or they have timers set on like online submissions. Like I know a lot of times, when I was in school, I would write a paper and then I'm sitting there and, I know that at 11:59, I'm not going to be able to submit that paper. And then you have to learn which professors will open the application back up so you can submit your papers and which ones won't. So for Malik to sit there and think that using his daughter, not so much as an excuse, but not going the extra mile because of his daughter to be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be, is not going to fly in the real world. Well, after Randall and Malik have their little discussion, Malik asks Randall to help him get an internship at City Hall, and Randall agrees. And so then the two of them start laughing because they know that Deja is going to lose her mind when she finds out that the two of them are going to be spending more time together. So back at home, Beth, has jokes about Randall and the dance scene and everything. And Deja lets Randall know that he's running her life by giving Malik the internship. But Beth, can't believe that he actually gave Malik the internship, because she probably thinking like I'm thinking, like, that boy ain't going to do what he's supposed to do because he got too much on his plate being a father and everything. But Randall, he believes in Malik. So J1 calls to let him know that the bulletin has gone viral, and not just viral locally, but they normally get about 5,000 views, but now they're up to 100,000 views, and that they could possibly make the national news. Later that evening, Randall is on the phone watching the video of him, stripping and dancing, and he's reading the news headlines. And so the scene goes to the Asian man that we've seen in previous episodes, who is also watching the video. And so we're like anticipating, oh, it's about to happen. It's about to happen. He's going to reach out to Randall. But we will have to wait and see. So guys, that's it for me for this episode of This Is Us, season 5, episode 4, which was titled Honesty. And I will be coming right back with the recap for episode 5, and then we'll be back on track for tonight. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.